The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of this weekend's BYU football and the new look Big 12 Conference. First and 12 is sponsored by Macy's Grocery Store. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It's another edition of First and 12 right here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio. Thanks for being with us on a Sunday. Oh, my goodness. First week of BYU in the Big 12. And you know what? Could have gone either way. But they take the loss instead. 38-27 is the final there in Lawrence yesterday. And my goodness, we've got a ton to get through. And it's not just the BYU results. It's everything else across the Big 12. That's what we do on this one. And, of course, always joining me, he is Mitch Harper, live in Lawrence, Kansas. What's going on, Mitch?
Oh, you know, Alex, it was good to experience Big 12 football in person for the first time. And, you know, I got to say, the folks in Lawrence, they were nice, but I think there was also this feeling of, what do we do with you, BYU fans? Do we invite you to the tailgate? Do you tailgate? Do you not? What do we do with you? It was kind of this awkward filling out process, and the awkwardness kind of carried over, unfortunately, for BYU's football team onto the field as you know, Kansas gets a big win. We'll get to that, I'm sure, and we'll get to obviously all the headlines and big stories in the Big 12 Conference and an eventful Week 4 as conference play ramped up. So I'm excited.
Let's just jump in right here. And it is, of course, kicking everything off with our Big 12 headlines. Everything 1 to 12 in the Big 12. Let's do it.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shape this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
All right, Mitch, you were there. Kansas racks up 221 yards on the ground as they end up rolling through BYU. And it wasn't just the 221 yards. It was really that second half. BYU goes into the break with the lead. And then as soon as a couple guys, key dudes, start missing on the defense, as soon as those Kansas backs were getting into that second level, especially in those last couple drives, it seemed to be a little bit easier, especially with those 2s and 3s in. There's a little bit of an injury issue right now in that BYU defense.
BYU's depth definitely going to be tested, that's for sure. And they gave up, 2 touchdowns to the Kansas defense, the BYU offense did, and you had that, fumble recovery, scoop and score by Kobe Bryant, who one of the better DBs in the Big 12. I thought he had one of his best performances as a Jayhawk, and then Kenny Logan Jr. picked off Keaton Slovis in the third quarter. BYU, they missed an opportunity, Alex. They had a chance to really make a statement in the Big 12 Conference, because had they got that game, they could have got on a little bit of a run in the league, but missed opportunity against a more talented, deeper, faster Kansas team, which I don't think we would have used those terms a couple years ago about this program, but it definitely applied on Saturday.
Yeah, they wouldn't have used that term either on this one. Headline number 2, BYU, part of that loss, of course, were the 2 touchdowns that they gave up to the defense of Kansas. It wasn't just that blast of a shot to Parker Kingston. It was also the pick 6, and you just cannot win games when you give up 2 defensive touchdowns.
It's nearly impossible. BYU's been priding itself on taking care of the football and avoiding those sort of costly mistakes, and it sunk them on Saturday in Lawrence. Headline number 3, though, and we'll get more to BYU and Kansas coming up a little bit later this hour. Headline number 3, Oklahoma. They spoiled Cincinnati's Big 12 home debut. The Sooners, they get a win 20-6, and defense kind of wins the day for the OU. Yeah,
and I think interestingly enough, it looked like it was a good game. Cincinnati getting their best shot. They're there at the nip in Cincinnati, and it was a nice atmosphere, and you can kind of see the welcoming of the new teams to the Big 12 so far. Not going great for the newbies of the conference, and so everybody waiting for those 4 teams to kind of break through, and today was not the day for any of them to be able to do it.
Headline number 4, Cincinnati was without defensive standout Deshaun Price. He anchors that star position. He got suspended for a team violation. Expected to be back for BYU next Friday, but that was a big loss for the Bearcats as they tried to slow down this high-powered Oklahoma attack. They did pretty well. I mean, Dylan Gabriel had 323 passing yards, but to hold him to only 20 points compared to what Oklahoma's been putting out, I thought that was a pretty respectable showing from Cincinnati. And Scott Satterfield, even in the postgame, said that they're not too far away. So they feel like they're coming out of this game kind of like a moral victory in a way where they were a lot more competitive than people maybe thought.
Yeah, and of course BYU fans keeping an eye on that one because Cincinnati comes into Provo on a short week on Friday. The big one down in Texas, of course, was in Waco. Headline next that we have here for you is Texas defeating Baylor. And I'm going to say beat the pants off of Baylor because it's also a home game for Baylor. Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears do not look good right now.
They do not. I mean, Texas wins 38-6, and it wasn't competitive. Alex, Baylor gets shut out in the second half. They didn't put up any fight, which is interesting because there was a lot of feeling maybe the wise guys that felt Baylor could be a bit of a spoiler this week, and no chance. And, I think this is another example of Texas looking like this is not your typical Texas team that blows a game that you're not expecting them to. Nice bounce back after that underwhelming showing against Wyoming last week. Quinn Ewers, big plays. I mean, this Texas team is rolling, and I just don't see anyone slowing them down anytime soon.
Speaking of other teams that are new to the conference, Kansas State ends up pulling away from UCF in the second half. That was a 44-24 game, so it didn't even look close numbers-wise, Kansas State bouncing back from their loss last week.
They did, and that was a nice win because, Kansas State had a heartbreaker a week ago at Missouri. And UCF, to their credit, in their Big 12 debut, it was a big deal for the Knights who, like, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston, been waiting 2 years for this stage. They were competitive. They showed well with a backup quarterback. Remember, John Reese Plumlee is still out. Timmy McClain was in. This was a game going into the fourth quarter, but ultimately the physicality of K-State pulled away. And it was good for K-State. They had Will Howard at quarterback. He got banged up against Missouri last week, and there was questions whether or not he was going to play. He performed well and even had a touchdown run in the win. So good win for Kansas State, and I got to imagine that's going to have an impact on the Big 12 power rankings a little bit
Our
later.
power rankings are going to get absolutely blasted again this week.
They are.
I have no idea what to think about this thing, and not the least of which were the results that happened on our next headline. Headline number 8, West Virginia absolutely beating up Texas Tech. I don't know what to think anymore. Neil Brown, I apologize, my friend. We did not think that West Virginia was going to be any good this year, and we thought Texas Tech was going to be better, conversely.
And West Virginia gets this win without Garrett Green at quarterback. He went through warm-ups, and there was maybe a case that he might get in, but still a few weeks away, or not weeks away, but he's still out from returning. Nico Martial comes in, gets a touchdown pass in his first career start, and delivers a big win. And, headline number 9, Texas Tech, their fans are ready to melt down after a 1-3 start, and it's valid because Tyler Shuck, the star quarterback, he suffered a broken fibula, according to reports. He's going to need surgery. He might be out for the year, so that leaves Baron Morton's coming in as the backup. So things unraveling after so much preseason hype on Texas Tech. 1-3 start for the Red Raiders.
I mean, they did lose to the first place West Virginia Mountaineers at their place. So, there's always that. Iowa State has points on the board. That offense starts to get going here, and Oklahoma State continues their downward spiral.
I think the over/under in this game was like 38 points, and it was over.
People would have taken it, yeah. People would
in the
have
first half.
Yes.
Iowa State had an offensive explosion. Rocco Beck, the heralded quarterback, throws for 348, and big win for Iowa State to avoid the cellar. And headline 11, Oklahoma State, they just might be the worst team in the Big 12. I'm very curious, Alex, to see how maybe that locker room, that all these new faces in there, how they respond going forward, because Oklahoma State just looks like maybe they're checking out a little bit. So we'll see how they respond.
Maybe the long-term honeymoon that they've had with Mike Gundy coming to a swift close at some point if he can't figure it out. And then finally TCU rolling through SMU. It's the 107th playing of that game. It really is the Iron Skillet game.
It is.
I mean, this sounds like TCU versus SMU. You order that at a Denny's, I guess, on a Saturday morning?
That it is. And Sonny Dykes is 4-0 in these Iron Skillet games. Obviously, was at SMU before TCU, and now he's got a 2-0 start in this Iron Skillet game. It's going to be, a series that comes to an end soon with SMU going to the ACC and then TCU continuing to reside in the Big 12. But good win for TCU, and maybe we're not giving them enough credit. I think that Week 1 underwhelming performance was not good, but I think that they've quietly done a nice job and suddenly are 3-1 through the first 4 weeks.
I cannot wait for the rest of this 1st and 12 today. Mitch Harper's in Kansas. I'm here in Salt Lake City at Broadcast House, and we are bringing you 1st and 12 on a Sunday. Glad to have you here with us. You can always download the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Maybe your habit is to listen to this thing on your way in on Monday morning. Whatever it might be, download the podcast. You can go to KSLSports.com. You can also download the KSL Sports app and click on the podcast page there as well. Mitch and I are committed to make this thing happen as we get BYU rolling in the Big 12, and then Utah enters the Big 12 next year. You got to get to know the new conference and the newcomers and all that surrounds it. So let's jump into a BYU breakdown on the way back here, Mitch. We'll come back. I'm going to get your insights on what goes on at a home game in Kansas and how BYU handled the big stage of their first time in the Big 12. Stay with us. It is 1st and 12 on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
Put out some columns this week from Lawrence, Kansas. I'm still here in Kansas. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, host of Unrivaled weekdays on the KSL Sports Zone. We're together here every Sunday, 10 to noon, here on 1st and 12, giving you the breakdown of BYU and the Big 12 football conference here in the league. And, you know, BYU, they fall to the Kansas Jayhawks 38-27, and this show brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Happy shopping. And, Alex, it's a tough loss for BYU, I got to say, because it felt like there was a chance, there were some windows there for BYU to take ownership of that game, especially at the beginning of the second half, but Kansas, a much better team than I think people want to give them credit for as a preseason ninth-place team in the Big 12.
So they did what they also did in Arkansas, right? They get down early, they come back because I think it was also a 14-0 lead, I think, right, for Kansas, right. And BYU comes back, and then they end up putting things together. They go into the half up 17-14, and with the ball coming to them. So you go, okay, throw away that ridiculous, jet sweep, fumble, scoop and score by Kobe Bryant II. So let me ask you this, Mitch, as a Laker fan yourself, you had mixed feelings of Kobe Bryant returning a scoop and score on the Cougs, I would imagine. But
it's COBEE, it's a different. He doesn't have that Mamba mentality, but he was very vicious in that hit. He knocked out Parker Kingston. That was a heck of a hit, I gotta say. Almost
literally, right? He left the game, and the trainer has the helmet in the hand. That's never a good sign. We'll have to see what the update is on him. But you knocked out a major piece there.
I hope Parker's okay, but I gotta say, I love seeing some hard hitting in football, and I felt like the refs were pretty good about allowing that hard hitting to happen, and maybe that's kind of a standard in the Big 12.
2 years ago, they would have thrown the flag and then tried to figure it out on the replay, right? That's what we did with those helmet-to-helmet contact, or at least wondering if it was the helmet-to-helmet. So I thought the same thing. I went, oh, man, did he get him? And I think BYU fans are going, that's targeting. But it's like, he got him with that shoulder. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was straight out of the WWE. It looked fake almost, right? That thing just blew out of his hand. So that was flushed by the second half. You go into the second half with the lead and the ball, and you give up another defensive touchdown. And I thought that the accuracy that Slovis had in the first half had kind of disappeared a little bit, and Kansas made the adjustments and said, we're not going to let Isaac Rex go loose like he did in the first half.
You got the full Keaton Slovis experience, honestly, on Saturday. You saw
the longest run of the day was 7 yards. 7 yards.
The offensive line, Alex, is underperforming for yet again another season. I mean, they did this in stretches last year. They're good in pass protection, and they have moments where they're great there, especially a guy like Braden Keim, who stepped in at right tackle. He's great in pass protection, but like Caleb Etienne, not good in run blocking. And BYU's got a real issue at the tackle position. And when Kingsley Suamataia is getting banged up, it looked like it was a bruised thigh from what I understand. So he should be good, and he came back at the end of the game. But still, that once you lost Waylon Lapuahu, too, at the left guard spot, he went out with a left elbow injury. He was in a sling by game's end. BYU has got some real issues at the offensive line. They've severely underperformed. They don't look like they explode off the line of scrimmage at all. No one's getting pushed back on these opposing defenses. And, keep in mind, Kansas, their front seven was viewed as kind of underperforming, and they revamped it a lot. Lance Leipold and that crew went into the portal to kind of retool things, but that was kind of viewed as maybe the weakness where BYU could attack, and that didn't feel like that was the case at all, as Kansas just looked like the more athletic, quicker team, and BYU had no answers. And L.J. Martin, credit to him for trying to, get as much as he could. There were some tough yards where that 4th and 1 in the second quarter where he's basically backing up with his back, leaning over to get. I mean, there was just no movement up front. And I kind of point the blame there at the offensive line. They have to get better. Maybe they have to change things up again. They already changed ETN. Maybe you go Connor Pay at center. I don't have the answers, but it feels like there needs to be some sort of change because it's not working right now.
Jalen Daniels is a good player. I think that they did a lot to bottle him up. I mean, he was super efficient through the air, 14 for 19 for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns, no picks. So he took care of the ball in that way. They weren't going to give anything away to those linebackers or that secondary. But I mean, the big. I didn't think he was as flashy. I didn't see that guy and go, oh yeah, that's your bona fide Big 12 Player of the Year. I don't know. Maybe I didn't see the same thing you did, but I was kind of watching him the whole time going, okay, is this guy going to be the best guy in the league? And I didn't think that. And then with that, I thought, wow, BYU really could have gotten this guy because maybe he's not the best player in the Big 12 right now.
Well, I thought BYU did a nice job with, time of possession. Kansas's offense was kept off the field quite a bit. I mean, some of that was obviously the defensive touchdowns, which kept them off the field. But,
right.
I thought that Kansas offense, seeing it in person and seeing how they line up and their formations, I mean, they throw so much. We knew that coming in, Alex, but it was kind of fascinating just to see it live in person. And by the second half, there was no pushback from BYU's defense. And I thought Daniels, there was a third down. He picked it up with his feet. Lance Leipold even said in the postgame that they intentionally, he kind of admitted that they held Jalen Daniels back from running the ball in his 2 previous starts in non-conference with an intention to hold him and unleash him in conference play. And I thought that was evident in the second half. But you're right. He didn't have a flawless performance, and you wonder how much of that is still the back tightness that he's still dealing with. But I do think that he is a special player. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in this league. Is he the best? I don't know. But I feel like he definitely shined when his team needed him to pull away, and they did. They had the chance to slam the door on BYU, and they seized that opportunity where, that connection he had with Luke Grimm, who's also been banged up. Those are some nice throws that Jalen Daniels was throwing with, and he didn't have much pressure at all. BYU had a 3-man rush at one point in the first half, and they just got stonewalled. Jalen Daniels had all the time in the world. He was just kind of dealing. BYU didn't bring enough heat to make things uneasy for him.
Also a critique that people were hoping was going to get better after that Arkansas game. They say, hey, saw some pressure there. Let's see if it gets better by Kansas. They've got a lot to figure out here still. Yeah. We've got a lot to still break down, so we're going to come back after this. When we take the break, we'll come back, have a little bit more of this breakdown of BYU versus Kansas there in Lawrence. We've got some sound from the podium from Kalani Sitake. You'll be able to hear his explanation of their first game on the road in the Big 12 in BYU football history. We will come back. More to go right here. It is First and 12, brought to you by Macy's, your local grocer with the freshest fruits, the vegetables from local farms, your favorite local brands, Macy's. Happy shopping. We'll come back. More to go right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, and on KSL News Radio. It's First and 12.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of this weekend's BYU football and the new look Big 12 Conference. First and 12 is sponsored by Macy's Grocery Store. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, welcome back. It is First and 12 right here. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio. Doubling up because it's so dang good to get you wrapped up on the Big 12. I know BYU fans, you're licking your wounds a little bit after the Cougs lost yesterday in Lawrence. 38-27. And the Cougs, of course, giving up 14 points on defense. I mean, when you start giving up when you get a scoop and score to start off the game, not good. But I think BYU fans, Mitch, everybody goes, hey, that's all right. We've seen this happen before. And then they get down 14. They go, hey, we've seen this happen before. And they did the comeback thing. You do learn stuff week to week when you have moments like that. And then Kansas delivered a couple of haymakers in the second half. They won the second half decidedly, absolutely blew up BYU in the second half, and they started to roll on offense. And so many things went the way of Kansas. And we've got more to jump into here. Before we get into Kalani's comments, how was it atmosphere-wise? Like, in terms of a stadium, because everybody from what we've heard is, yeah, this is not the Kansas that we've seen in decades past. They are into this, you know. Mark Mangino was a little bit of a flash in the pan, you know, obviously. There feels like there's more consistency here with Lance Leipold and his team.
Leipold's a heck of a coach. There was a Mark Mangino poster outside the stadium on the stadium facade. I was like, what an absolute unit.
Oh, man.
Mark Mangino, just pure masculinity. I love that, man.
5'7", 4 bills. Put that guy in the middle. Let's go.
I love that guy. But I thought the crowd, it was, a sellout, tickets sold, but there were still some empty seats scattered throughout the stadium. I thought Kansas fans, though, pretty loud. There were some stretches there where they got it rocking, but it's clear that venue needs an update, clearly, and they're going to get that in 2025. But it's an old stadium. I mean, it's the 7th oldest stadium in college football. I didn't realize that until I was doing my research for this game. Oldest stadium west of the Mississippi. So it's kind of a relic of a stadium, and it kind of felt like that a little bit. But press box was nice. I thought the crowd, it was just, again, weird to think BYU, Kansas, undefeated, and they're in the Big 12. And it was just like, tell yourself that 2 years ago when Leipold first took the job and BYU was, just doing its thing as an independent. And I think right now, too, Alec, before we get to Kalani, we do need to remind Cougar fans, hey, just because you got one loss now doesn't mean you're instantly guaranteed to go to some toilet bowl selected by ESPN. You're still in a conference, and you can still get hot and maybe go to a decent bowl game against a Power 5 team. Not all is lost after just one loss.
Yeah, the level of depression people would hit after one and then 2 losses. When it got to 2, people were like, well, it's definitely over now. Call Grandma. Right. We're not coming to New York. Call Grandma. We're not doing anything cool this year, I guess. Jeez. Sorry. We got to show up. Here's what Kalani said after the game. Lots of disappointment, obviously, and especially when there are mistakes that lead to immediate scores. That's something that you just absolutely bang your head against the lockers with. And here's what Kalani said after the game.
I give a lot of credit to Kansas, what they're doing defensively and what they've done offensively to get the win. Obviously, the thing that stands out the most is whenever you give up turnovers like that and you don't get them yourself, and it's tough to win games, let alone only lose by 11 points or so. And it's tough to turn the ball over, but then have it be scores on the other side. So I believe it's a fumble return for a touchdown and a pick 6 that cost us. And we had another interception when I think we crossed midfield at that point. So got to take care of the football better. We had another ball on the ground, and it's just as simple as ball security. Got to do better than that, and that's my job as a coach to get us ready for that. And we had some mistakes that happened on all 3 phases. It wasn't just one side, but you can't give a team like Kansas that many opportunities and that many freebies in terms of what we can control. So speaking of what we can control is to get on to the next one, learn from this, get better. I'm proud of the guys' effort and the fight in the game. Obviously, we had our moments and just need to put it together consistently for 60 minutes.
They basically decided to drop guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, he scrambled the first. Is that what you talk about? Yeah. Scrambled the first down. Yeah, two choices are to bring more pressure, and but I think we're planning on Jalen getting rid of the ball in the timing route, and he didn't do it. Instead, he tucked it and ran and got the first down. That's game of football. I mean, sometimes you're going to bring a lot of heat. Sometimes you drop 8, and if you have a really good quarterback like Jalen does, and then he makes you pay for it. So I'll let Jake explain that one, but that's. I've done that before too, so it's okay. We just needed the stops when it counted. That was one play where you needed that ball back, and there's enough mistakes to go around, and I don't know if that was the one, but it was a key point. We just, with everything that's happened, we looking at the yards and the plays and everything like that this is kind of like the flip side. How do they win by that score? Is because we spotted them some points and didn't take care of the football and didn't get off the field enough. So, but credit to Kansas. A really talented team, and I've been saying that all week. And I really like Lance Leipold. I think he's an amazing coach, and he's done a great job with this program. And you can see that they play hard. We can see it on film, and we felt that today. And we have some guys that are banged up, and I think they do too. And that's, once you get in the conference play, that's going to be the name of the game. We had to dip into our depth a little bit, and we might have to for next week. But I don't know. Nobody, from what I know, nobody's out for this season yet. So we'll hopefully get those guys back. But until then, we just got to depend on the guys that we have that are fresh and ready to roll.
Why do you struggle with run the ball so much?
Yeah, if I had the answer for that, I would tell you guys. Maybe you guys can let me know. But it's probably a combination of just getting the guys' confidence back. And then, I think a lot of teams are trying to take the run away from us, which is fine. If they do that, we got to make them pay, and that's throw the ball in the air. And when you throw the ball in the air, you got to take care of the football. You can't throw interceptions and can't take sacks. And I thought Kansas' game plan was to take the run away, and they did that, and then try to make big plays on defense with sacks and interceptions. And they got that early fumble return for a touchdown. Big plays by them. We didn't make enough plays to counter it, and that's the game of football that happens. And I got to do a better job and make sure our guys are on the better side of things, that we put them in better position to have success.
Mitch, there's Kalani Sitake from the podium. You heard Jay Drew from the Deseret News. So what's going on? What's your problem with the run game? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. Maybe you guys can put it in writing, and I can implement some stuff here.
Hey, maybe Jay should have just taken the cues from the previous reporter, inserting his opinions in the question. Maybe that's what we need to do.
Give me a 6-minute question. That's all we wanted at the podium.
So that's what we need.
So as we started the breakdown, all the things that every one of us saw that was difficult to go through the game. Hey, guess what? Kalani saw all those things. And it's on to the next. I think the best news out about this whole thing was the injuries are going to not necessarily be the season-ending ones, but you still getting banged up already in the first game of conference play. It's going to be a long season.
You hope. I mean, Kalani's been notorious for saying, it's precautionary, and then they're done for the year. So you hope that's the case. And Keenan Slovis, he had his foot stepped on late. He said he was okay. He was walking gingerly at the end of the game.
He took a shot on that pick too, and he was sore the rest of the afternoon. I think after a couple of those hits.
Tough game for BYU as they fall again 38-27. More recap on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. We got to get to a break, though. We'll get toward the Big 12 featured game of the week outside of the BYU contest. So we'll get to that, of course, coming up as well. Power rankings. How do we have it shaking out 1-14? There is a lot of movement.
Bloodbath.
It's 1st and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
It was a busy week in Week 4 of Big 12 football action. This is 1st and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. You can hear Alex every single day on Unrivaled, 3 to 7 on the KSL Sports Zone. I'm holding it down on Cougar Nation and Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL News Radio.
You guys can take phone calls tomorrow night.
We do. And
first
time after a loss. Woo! So I expect the phone lines to be on fire by Cougar Nation. So that'll be 6 to 7 tomorrow, taking your phone calls. But around the Big 12 Conference, we always look at a kind of featured game. And this week we look at Oklahoma-Cincinnati, in large part because, not necessarily the final score, but it was Cincinnati's debut. Big 12 homecoming was taking place. Brett Yormark was in town at the NIP, and Oklahoma continues to show that they're due for a bounce back in year 2 under Brett Venables.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know what to expect from this game because Cincinnati's been putting up a little bit of a fight, and they showed that they're a little bit more athletic. Dylan Gabriel is kind of this guy that you saw over the first few games where you're going, well, they're going to put up 60 against everybody. And that's what it kind of felt like. But in the end, I think Cincinnati fought hard. Cincinnati has had a good defense for a minute, right? I mean, so you knew they were going to come and be a little bit more difficult to handle on the defensive side of things. But Oklahoma says, well, we also have a pretty darn good defense. And in the end, 20-6 is not a score I would have thought of. I'm certain that's the under on that game because people were just expecting Dylan Gabriel to put up 4 touchdowns. He had the yardage, right? 322, but had just the 1 touchdown. And it was not a blow-up of offensive proportions for Oklahoma. They only had 322 yards of passing and then 100 on the ground. And so you're just over that 400-yard mark. They're used to getting, an extra 200 on top of that, it seems like, over the first 2 games. But credit to Cincinnati for really showing up and punching Oklahoma in the mouth because they have to get used to this, week in and week out. And Emory Jones looked very, very gettable this game, right? I mean, he ends up throwing the 2 picks, and it wasn't pretty for them, but they, can't end up getting in the end zone, and that's what ended up doing it for them. But once again, another newbie to the conference goes 0-1 in conference play.
I loved after the game, the Oklahoma players started cracking open Skyline chili cans and sipping it. I was like, I don't know if I would chug chili. Right. Would you, Alex? Would you start chugging Skyline chili?
Listen, when I was in college, I got pretty desperate for stuff, all right? And chili out of a can was one of those things that somebody – but this feels like one of these moments where, we're trying to feel out how to make fun of you guys. How are we supposed to – the new guys in the conference? It's like, okay, I don't know. How do we clown on these guys? Get after their chili. Oh – busted. Some guy's got a handful of spaghetti that he could put the chili on top of. I don't know where they were going with that. I thought the same thing. I go, well, that's a weird flex to be like, we're clowning these guys because we're clowning their chili. But whatever. It was fun.
I was actually kind of excited that Oklahoma actually had some excitement for the win because I would have thought, oh, we have to go into this Cracker Jack, stadium. We're getting ready for the SEC. This is typical Big 12 throwing us into Cincinnati. This was a good win for Oklahoma, and I think they've exceeded my expectations for them. I honestly wasn't very high on the Sooners. I thought they would be kind of a middle-of-the-road team again in the league, but they're doing a lot better job, and I feel it was a little bit of bend but don't break, and we'll get to some of that sound from Brent Venables coming up in a little bit later in hour number 2. But, I think that they're kind of buying into his identity defensively. And a couple weeks, man, that Texas State Fair between the Sooners and the Longhorns, this could be one of the biggest Oklahoma-Texas games. I mean, it's already going to be big because it's the last in the Big 12, but that's going to be a huge stage for both of those teams. And I think also, too, Cincinnati, I was pleasantly surprised with what they did. Emory Jones is who he is, as you noted, 2 interceptions today, no touchdowns, but that defense does carry, and I think for a game like next week against BYU, who's got some real issues on the ground, if you make BYU one-dimensional, Cincinnati can kind of muck up that game and make it a low-scoring affair to where maybe they spring an upset or maybe they're the favorite. So I think Cincinnati's a little bit further ahead than I was expecting through 4 games in the Scott Satterfield Year 1 era.
I'm looking at this thing. So everybody's got so right now, all the new teams, Houston 0-1 in conference, Cincinnati 0-1 in conference, Central Florida 0-1 in conference, and then you got
Kirry Mahajir's going to be mad at you, Alex. He's going to be coming going, why are you calling it Central Florida?
Oh, crap,
call him Brigham Young University?
Sorry. Yes, we do.
Kirry Mahajir, man, he's coming for you if you keep saying that.
Mahajir's like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine for you new guys. And you're like, geez, their athletic director is he's the most aggressive on the branding of any person I've ever met. I thought I was going to get slapped at Big 12 Media Day. But everybody, including UCF, I put that in post. UCF. So all the newbies are 0-1, which is, I think BYU fans should go, okay, look, we're not the only ones. And even if there was one team that had won their first their debut game in conference, you would probably have been like, shoot, BYU couldn't get it done. At least you have that. All the newbies got punched in the mouth this week, and they have to come out. Everybody's going to be looking for their first win in conference at Big 12 so far. So that's at least a fun one to follow.
It is. And think about when these 4 teams, were invited 2 years ago. There was a lot of talk that, BYU, Cincinnati, in the pursuit of a playoff, they were going to step into the Big 12, maybe be some of the best teams. That was some of the narrative a little bit. And I think some of these legacy members in the Big 12 have said, that's not happening. And I think there was I got to imagine there was a little bit of a point of emphasis to say, let these new guys know what they're walking into. I think BYU got a heavy dose of, not necessarily reality, because they knew it was going to be tough, but I just think that they realize, man, if Kansas is supposedly the 9th best team in this league, and the talent that they had, and Oklahoma was a 6-7 team last year, and they pretty much ran it all back. I mean, there's good teams in this league, and it's just kind of a week in, week out grind that teams like these newcomers, they are not used to. They're just not, and BYU a little bit more so than the others, but. It truly is a grind in this league, and the climb to try to get to the top is maybe a little bit steeper than maybe anyone envisioned coming into year one.
I think maybe there's a thing I have in my head where I am sliding UCF because I made it a 44-24 game when I talked about it earlier, but they punched in that last touchdown. It was actually 44-31. So Terry Mahajer and UCF, my apologies. Go Golden Knights. Isn't that what they are, the Golden Knights? I'm just kidding.
They're just Knights.
Wow.
UCF Knights.
It's just the Knights. Okay, well, they've got that one guy running around, so good for them. And
Nitro.
Nitro's going to be there. Everybody's over right now, the newbies. All right, we'll take another break here. We'll jump out, and we will come back. And hour number 2 is so much fun. You know why? We kick everything off, Mitch, with our Big 12 power rankings.
Yes.
I thought last week, we had to really shake it up, and I felt bad for a lot of those teams. This week, an absolute bloodbath, and I am unapologetic about it. Okay, so let's come back, get to our Big 12 power ranking. That's all around the corner here on First and 12 on KSL News Radio and heard on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone every Sunday. Thanks for being with us. Mitch, Harper, Alex, Kirry. We'll be right back. More to go. Stay with us.